Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name's Kendra and I talk about true crime stories. So if you like true crime and that's your thing, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Today's story is going to be about 21-year-old Grace Emmy Rose Millane. Grace was born on December 2nd, 1996 in Essex, United Kingdom. Her parents were David and Gillian Millane. They also had two other children, two boys named Declan and Michael. They lived in a small town outside of Essex called Wickford. Grace was a very happy child growing up. Her father did own a successful construction company, which eventually made him a millionaire. Because of this, Grace and her family had a adventurous type of lifestyle. Very fun, they were very active, and they had no stress in the household. Growing up, she was described as being a free spirit, fun, loving, and very creative, and she loved to paint in her free time. She graduated from St. Thomas More High School and was considered a very responsible young adult. She had a lot of drive and a lot of motivation. She attended and graduated from the University of Lincoln with a bachelor's degree in advertising and marketing. While Grace was enrolled in the university, she did have plans to want to kind of travel the world. If not the world, she wanted to travel to at least a few different places. So while she was enrolled into college, she did work a part-time job trying to save up some money to make these dreams of traveling into reality. So as soon as she graduated, she did have enough to actually put these plans in motion. She started posting to social media how excited she was to be able to afford to travel. She started counting down the days until her backpacking tour finally began. Before leaving to go on what she called her adventure, Grace decided to cut her long brown hair and donate it to a place that created wigs for children undergoing cancer treatment. Soon after donating her hair, she boarded a flight to Peru. She stayed in Peru for 6 weeks, and while there, she made a bunch of new friends. She went sightseeing while taking photos and posting them to social media and also sending them to her friends and family. Her traveling wouldn't end in Peru. She continued her backpacking tour and was off to a new scenery. She just wanted to travel and see all these new places, take every single moment as they came with no particular plans. Grace arrived in New Zealand on November 20th and traveled around the Upper North Island area. On November 30th, 2018, Grace received a message from a clean-cut looking man named Jesse Shane Kempson. He was 26 years old, he looked very athletic, he was tall, and he was very attractive. He asked her out for drinks, but Grace wasn't very sure. She wasn't feeling like she wanted to do something like that, so she turned down his offer. After a few persistent messages, on December 1st, Grace finally agreed to meet Jesse. Maybe she agreed to meet with Jesse because the following day was her birthday and maybe she didn't want to spend her birthday alone, but either way, she did agree. Now, I do want to say that in this video, I'm going to be throwing a ton of times and dates at you guys. It's going to be a lot to even comprehend. So I'm going to try to figure out something to where I can put the times and the dates and the places on the screen. But you are going to hear a lot of, and then this happened, and then this time, at this time. So you're going to hear all that. It's going to be a lot, I know, but I just want to give you guys the information that I read. So if it doesn't make sense, I do apologize. I will put the whole timeline in my description below. At 5:40 p.m., Jesse's seen on CCTV at a bar called Bluestone Room waiting to go meet up with Grace. During the same time, Grace is also seen on camera arriving at Sky City Center. A few minutes later at 5:45 p.m., he's seen then meeting up with Grace and embracing her with a friendly hug, and then the two of them start walking off together. The two head into a place called Andy's Burgers and Bars and are seen ordering one margarita, which was for $18, and a passion fruit mint drink for $12. Jesse then pulls out his debit card and he pays this tab. They appear to be smiling, they seem very comfortable with each other, and Grace doesn't seem to have any regret at this point. She doesn't seem like she's uncomfortable in any way. They stay at this Andy's Burgers until 7 p.m. when they are seen again on camera exiting. But they didn't end their night at this bar. They seem to be having a very good time because at 7:16, both Jesse and Grace again are seen entering a Mexican cafe for a bite to eat and for some more drinks. It is reported that here they ordered one jug of sangria and 2 large jugs of margarita. At 8:24 p.m., you see Jesse at the front desk paying the bill with his debit card, and Grace is standing by his side. They then soon exit and they arrive at the Bluestone Room around 8:30 p.m. Soon after arriving, they are spotted at a table sitting across from each other where they embrace in a hug and a passionate kiss. Jesse is seen grabbing her by the back of the head while they're kissing, and it seems to be as if he's, lightly tugging at the back of her head while he's kissing her. More like pulling her at her hair gently. Jesse is seen getting up to walk away to use the restroom while Grace stays behind. While waiting for Jesse to arrive back from the restroom, Grace texts her best friend Amina. She texts her saying that he is an oil company executive and was looking to move to London within the next few months. Grace was very happy about this because she really enjoyed Jesse's company, and she thought it would be nice that if he moved to London, they can continue their friendship out there. She also told Amina in this text message that he has an apartment at a motel. Her friend then replied, "Well, you have to go up to his apartment at the motel and go to the very top floor." Now, I'm assuming she means maybe just for scenery purposes, maybe that part of downtown, if you went to the highest floor, maybe you would get like a really good view. I'm not really sure. She doesn't go into depth on that. But Grace then replies, "Literally, I click with him so well." When Jesse returns to their table, Grace decides that she now has to use the restroom, and she leaves her handbag behind. Within seconds, Jesse is seen grabbing her handbag from the table and then rummaging through it. So he's going through her belongings without her knowing, without her giving him permission. And then after a few minutes of going through it, he puts it on the chair that she was sitting on. Grace comes back and of course doesn't notice that he had went through her bag. Around 9:30 p.m., Jesse asks Grace if she would like to come back to his place. Now, because she was with him for now a few hours, she felt very comfortable with Jesse. She texted her friend saying that they click very well. I'm assuming she started to really like him, so she agrees to go back to his apartment. 10 minutes later, they head back to his apartment around 9:40 p.m. CCTV, of course, captures every single moment, and Jesse is seen with his arm around her neck and her shoulders while they're walking. Grace doesn't seem uncomfortable. She seems very happy, and she seems to be walking willingly. He didn't live far from the last bar that they were at. It only took them a few minutes to get to the entrance of his apartment lobby. Footage shows them entering the apartment elevator and then exiting the elevator when they arrived on the 3rd floor. And this would be the last known footage of Grace still alive. But it would not be the last time that anyone had heard from her. Grace sent another text message to her best friend Amina at 11:59 saying, quote, "I'll let you know what happens in the morning," end quote. Amina then responds to Grace in a friendly, jokingly way, quote, "Ho," end quote. So Amina calls her, or she gets a text message from Grace. She knows that she's gonna go stay the night with this man, and Amina texts her back, just joking around, saying like, "Okay, ho, all right, ho," or how, my friends do that. I don't know if your guys' friends do that. But Grace didn't reply back to that message, which didn't alarm Amina. She just assumed that maybe she was having a good time, she was enjoying herself. She's in a whole different country, she's, traveling. So she claimed that Grace was clearly drunk, but happy, and she didn't have any concerns for her safety at that time. Now, December 2nd is the morning of Grace's 22nd birthday. Friends and family start to flood Grace's text messages and phone calls with happy birthday text messages, but the text messages weren't being delivered and the phone calls weren't going through. They were going straight to voicemail, as if her phone was turned off. Her family and friends didn't think that this was anything to be alarmed about because it was very early in the morning and she may have been out the previous night. They thought maybe she might have still been sleeping. They were sure that Grace would sometime respond during that day. Around 8 a.m., Jesse is seen by himself, Grace not with him, entering the elevator and then exiting into his apartment lobby. Due to him living in a very populated city downtown, his movements the next few days would be caught all on CCTV footage. Again, I know all of these times that I'm going to throw at you are going to be they're going to sound very repetitive, but I want to just give you guys all the accurate times for those that can follow along. If you are more of a visual person, I will try to figure out a way to add a timeline to my video. If that for some reason doesn't work out, I will add a whole timeline to my description below. After seeing Jesse leave around 8 in the morning, Jesse's seen entering a convenience store on Elliott Street around 8:07 a.m. On camera, it does show Jesse kind of lingering around near the suitcases, deciding on which one he wanted to purchase. Now, he does grab a large size suitcase and he takes it to the counter and he purchases this item with cash. A few minutes later at 8:14 a.m., he is shown entering his apartment elevators with this same suitcase. While on the elevator, I do notice that Jesse continuously looks at his reflection. He's kind of checking himself out. He's also wearing a different outfit than what he was wearing when he was last seen with Grace. This morning, he is now wearing jeans and regular tennis shoes. About 20 minutes later, around 8:32 a.m., he's seen again leaving by himself and Grace still not with him. At 8:35 a.m., he stops at a Countdown Metro, which is another convenience store, and he's seen purchasing rubber gloves, bleach, and some other cleaning products. He again uses cash for this purchase. 10:25 a.m., he arrives back home, and he only stays about 2 hours before leaving his place again. He is seen at this time wearing gray sweatpants with, I believe, 2 black stripes on the knee. He is seen getting into a taxi cab at 10:33 a.m. and inside of the security camera inside of the taxi, he looks very visibly distressed and nervous. The taxi then drops him off at a rental car place called Apex at 10:42 a.m. He then rents a red hatchback Toyota Corolla and heads back to his residence. At this time, 11:02 a.m., when entering his apartment complex elevator, a blonde woman is seen entering the same elevator as Jesse. It's just them two on the elevator, and the camera you could see Jesse he keeps, she's kind of in front of him. He keeps looking down at her body. He looks like he's looking at her backside. So it's just kind of like creepy to see that in this footage. About 4 or 5 hours later, Jesse's seen again leaving his apartment and entering his apartment elevator. You can see he's again checking himself out in his reflection, and he's dressed in some nice jeans, a black t-shirt, and some dress shoes. At 3:57 p.m., he is spotted at the Reveille bar on camera. Now, I'm not sure. I have 2 different things. I do have my phone right here, and then I have my notes, but I don't know if it's the same place. Maybe they have 2 different names, or maybe people just call it that. But he is spotted at either the Reveille bar on camera, or it's called the Ponsby bar. So one of those 2, Reveille bar or Ponsby bar. But either way, he was spotted on surveillance camera at this particular bar, wearing now the same button up that he was wearing when he was with Grace. And at this bar, he meets a woman that he had met from Tinder. So he goes on a date while Grace is nowhere to be found. So he's continuing his Tinder dates. The woman leader states that sometime during this 2-hour date of theirs, Jesse did mention that police dogs cannot smell a dead body if it's more than 4 feet underground. After the date ended, Jesse did return home alone, but then at 7:12 p.m., he's seen getting on his apartment elevators, now in sweats, leaving his apartment complex. He arrives at the Countdown on Quay Street. Again, it's a convenience store, but he doesn't make a purchase this trip. He then goes home and is seen entering his apartment elevator at 7:45. Then he leaves 5 minutes after arriving and is seen on the elevator again at 7:50. Jesse goes back to that same Countdown off Quay Street, arriving at 8:11 p.m., but then this time he's seen on camera talking to an employee. He then rents a carpet cleaner, it's called a rug doctor, and he heads back to his home. 8:24 p.m. he's seen in his elevator going back up to his apartment with this carpet cleaner by his side. At 8:56 p.m., only 30 minutes after arriving with this carpet cleaner, he then is seen getting back onto the elevator and returning the carpet cleaner to the store. So whatever he used the carpet cleaner for only took him 30 minutes. After returning this rug doctor, he is seen on the elevator going back to his home, and then at 9:30 p.m. he is seen entering the elevator from his apartment, now using a trolley from the lobby to hold 2 large suitcases. The top suitcase seems more like a decoy. It seems doesn't appear to be heavy, as the one on the very bottom was a little bit larger, and it didn't seem to move as easily as the one on the top. It was more steady, as if it was full. He then takes the 2 suitcases and loads them in the back of his trunk, returning the trolley back to the lobby area of his apartment complex. December 3rd, around 6:50 a.m., Jesse pulls into a building supply store. He is seen on camera walking around, kind of looking at random things before purchasing a shovel. After this, purchase is when it's believed he disposed of the suitcase containing Grace's body. Around 9:30 a.m., Jesse is seen parking his rental car in his apartment parking garage, and when he gets out, he is barefoot. He has no shoes on and he has no socks. He walks to his trunk and he gets a small duffel bag out and he puts it over his shoulder, and he walks all the way across. He walks out of the parking garage barefoot, walks across the street into the apartment motel lobby area, enters the elevator, and heads into his apartment. Now, only about 15 minutes later at 9:52, he's seen leaving his home carrying a large garbage bag. I have no idea what he did with this trash bag. It does show him on camera footage taking the trash bag and walking into the parking garage with it where his car was parked, but I'm not sure if it was trash he threw it away in the dumpster or if he put it in his car. There's no footage of where he actually put the trash bag. Now at 9:58 a.m. he arrives at Mint Dry Cleaners and is shown leaving the employee a bag of items, which is believed to be some linen and some clothing items. He then pays and heads on his way. He then heads over to Wash World at St. Luke's and he hand washes his rental car. He is seen washing the outside and also washing some things that are from the trunk area. At 11:27 a.m. he's seen entering his complex elevator and he changed again. This time he's a little bit more dressed up than we've ever seen. He is wearing brown dress shoes this time. Usually he's wearing the black dress shoes. He's wearing a white t-shirt and a tuxedo jacket. He of course gets in the elevator and checks himself out looking at his reflection the entire ride down. 3:17 p.m. Jesse goes back to Mint Dry Cleaners to retrieve the items that he had left that morning and gives the woman now a duffel bag full of more items to be cleaned. At 4:50 p.m. Jesse is seen at Albert Park. He's spotted on CCTV walking through with a duffel bag before walking up to a public trash bin and emptying out some items from the duffel bag. Now, the items that he was disposing of from the duffel bag are believed to be Grace's items. He is seen again entering his apartment complex elevator at 5:03 p.m., but this time he has two large black suitcases. Now, a few minutes later at 5:03 p.m., Jesse is seen with two large suitcases entering his apartment elevator. Now, I don't know if there's any footage of him purchasing these. I don't know if they were brand new. I don't know where they came from. But he isn't seen again until the following morning at 8:43 a.m. and he's dressed in all black. He's wearing a black suit, he's wearing black dress shoes, and he looks very formal. He comes and goes as the day goes on. He's seen arriving home, leaving. He's leaving multiple times throughout the day. But now Grace's parents are starting to grow very concerned. They weren't concerned at first, thinking she was just very busy. She was having the time of her life, traveling, doing what she wanted to do. They thought Grace was maybe just busy and that they would hear from her eventually. But day 3 of not hearing from her, that's what finally made them decide to contact the police. So on December 5th, 2018, Grace's family reported her missing. It was very difficult because of how far they were from where Grace was last seen, but they did manage to make the report. Grace's father immediately flew out to help in the search for Grace, and he even was using the media to get her story out there. Now, David, Grace's father, went on the news, and in his first appearance, he said that Grace was their family's sunshine. She was very fun, easygoing, a great loving person, and he also said that they had never gone without contact with Grace for this long. He said her mother and her 2 brothers speak to Grace daily, that she's a very active person on social media. He also asked if anyone has come in contact with her or has seen her, please contact them immediately with any information. Grace's story became huge. It got a lot of media coverage. Because of this, a ton of tips started pouring in, which made police start to investigate, because we all know that adults can go missing if that's what they choose to do. The lead investigator on Grace's case was a man named Scott Beard. So November 6th, police were on Grace's trail. They were investigating her last whereabouts and following her every move starting on December 1st. They arrived at the motel that she was staying at for her trip, and they even received access to her room. They noticed right away that it looked as if she was planning to come back. Her belongings were still there, but they didn't see any foul play or anything concerning to them. They began to talk to staff at the hotel that she was staying at, and they learned that the last time that anyone had seen her was that night on December 1st. She was leaving the motel building and they had not seen her come back. They began to track all of her movements. While doing so, they checked her social media, which was very active because she always was showing photos of her traveling, and her last post was on November 1st where she posted a selfie, but other than that there was nothing further posted. Police then look at the most recent notification that was on her Facebook page by a man that commented on a photo of Grace saying, quote, "beautiful, very radiant," end quote. And that comment was left on December 2nd. So that comment was from a man named Jesse Kempson, who looked around the same age as Grace, and they decided to look into him. Investigators reached out to Jesse via email, letting him know that Grace was missing and that they just wanted to have him come in for questioning. They assured him that he was not in trouble and that he would not be arrested. Jesse responded to this email, letting them know that he had went on a date with her on December 1st, the previous night, but they had parted ways around 10:30 p.m. that same night, and he had no idea that she was even missing. Jesse had never responded back about coming into the police station for questions, so on that same day around 2:19 p.m., police arrive at Sky City Motel, where Jesse's apartment motel was. They enter the lobby asking employees if they had seen Grace, showing them photos, and even asking about Jesse. At this same time that the police are inside of his motel, Jesse is seen on CCTV outside of his motel about to enter his complex. But then he is caught by surprise when he notices in the lobby window 2 police officers standing there speaking to employees. He then tries to avoid them by turning around and quickly walking off down the street. But then an employee notices Jesse walking outside and alerts one of the investigators. So the 2 investigators run outside and they run after Jesse. They did bring Jesse in for questioning, and during his interview, he did lie about his whereabouts. He said they met on Tinder, they had a great date, things went well, but they separated at 10:30 and went off their own ways. Investigators weren't buying it. During this time, investigators were inside of his apartment, investigating it as a crime scene. At first glance, his apartment looked fine. It didn't look like anything was out of the ordinary. They decided to spray luminol for any hidden blood evidence, and as soon as they did that, the floor at the end of the bed lit up with huge circles and a few footprints. Also in the bedroom, they spotted a red blood stain on the wall. Due to tips from locals, cell phone data, CCTV, and blood evidence in the room, Jesse Shane Kempson was arrested for the murder of Grace Millane on November 8th. When questioned again, investigators asked what was up with the suitcase, what was he bringing it up to his apartment for, and why was he exiting his apartment with it. He asked if Grace's body happened to be in one of those suitcases. He of course denies it and says that the suitcase is still in his room and that they should go look for it, not realizing how much camera footage actually captured almost all of his moments. When presented with all of this overwhelming evidence that they had found in his bedroom and all the camera footage that was captured, Jesse then changed his story. Jesse at first claimed that he and Grace had consensual rough sex. They ended up taking intimate photos of each other. He took a shower, soon fell asleep, and woke up the next day to Grace's body on the foot of the bed. He said that she was no longer breathing, but then he changed his story again, saying that they had consensual rough sex, that he had choked her with intentions of pleasure, and when he realized that she wasn't breathing anymore, he said that he went to dial the police, which would be 911 for us in the United States. He went to dial the police's number, but he never actually connected the call. Now, he didn't connect the call because he said he was too scared and how it would look. When investigators asked him how would it have looked, he replied, quote, "because there was a dead body in my room," end quote. The next day, after Jesse was charged with Grace's murder, on December 9th around 4 p.m., her body was found in a shallow grave about 50 meters away from a country road in Whitaker Ranges Regional Park. Her body was found off Scenic Drive about 21 miles away from where Jesse was currently living. Inside of the shallow grave, they found a suitcase, and inside of the suitcase, they found Grace's naked remains forced into a fetal position. A candlelight vigil was held on the 11th and the 12th at multiple locations. Now, I know I'm probably gonna just mess this name up, but while on the verge of tears, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern made a public apology to Grace's family on December 10th, saying, "On behalf of New Zealand, I want to apologize. Your daughter should have been safe here." And she wasn't. Grace's father, David, goes on the media and says he hopes that Grace's death doesn't deter anyone from releasing their dreams of traveling the world. On December 10th through the 13th, Auckland Sky Tower and Harbour Bridge were lit in a white ribbon shape to mark Grace's death. Grace's funeral was held at Brentwood Cathedral in Essex, United Kingdom on January 10, 2019. Hundreds attended in her honor. Now, going into Jesse's background, he was born on December 28, 1991, with the name Jesse Shane Kempson in Lower Hutt, New Zealand, but he grew up in Wellington. When he was just 9 years old, his parents separated and he was then raised by his father and grandfather. His mother moved overseas to Australia, and eventually his father remarried and his family became a blended family. Jesse did attend and graduate high school. He then attended a college where he played softball at, I want to say, Otia College at a representative level for multiple teams. As a teenager, Jesse moved with his mother to Australia, but in 2011, he moved back to New Zealand and started living in a boarding house in Wellington. That's when Jesse started becoming a pathological liar. His insecurities started to get the best of him, and he wasn't happy with himself or how his life was turning out. So in order to get what he thought was the approval from people to like him, he started to lying about himself. He started to make lies to make himself look better. A former landlord of Jesse told Stuff magazine that Jesse claimed to be a professional softball player freshly signed up for the New Zealand's national softball team for the Black Sox. Now, the landlord says that Jesse would tell him constantly, "Yeah, my contract money's coming. My payments will come then." The landlord said, but the payments never came. After about 8 weeks of Jesse making excuses as to why he wasn't paying his landlord rent, the landlord then takes it upon himself and he reaches out to the Black Sox management, who they said never even heard of that guy. Jesse shortly after left his landlord hanging, never paid him, and he skipped town, leaving the landlord with more than $700 out of pocket. Sources who knew Jesse at the time said that he had claimed to have a bachelor's degree in international law. He was said to have came from a family of millionaires. He had contracts within immigration of New Zealand. Another lie he told was that his family owned a chain of restaurants in Sydney, and he was looking to buy a top-notch restaurant in Auckland right off the harbor. A few previous roommates in Greenland and Mount Eden spoke about Jesse's disturbing, womanizing, untrustworthy behavior prior to moving into the city life apartment where he had killed Grace. A woman that Jesse had previously lived with also claimed that when she stayed with him, he stole money from her as well. Now, the apartment that he was at where Grace was last seen, he failed to pay his rent there, and after he was arrested for Grace's murder, he was ordered to pay $5,500 for his past rent and also furniture replacement. Jesse returned to Australia for 6 years before again moving to New Zealand in 2016. After this, he had worked as a bartender and a builder laborer. By this time, Jesse and his family had grown apart. He started to get in trouble with the law. He got a drunk driving conviction in New Zealand, and he had also been arrested for disorderly behavior in Auckland and in Sydney. Jesse's grandfather, who raised him, claimed that Jesse fathered a child, but other relatives disputed this claim of him actually having a child. Now, during Jesse's initial court appearance, Jesse requested a name suppression. A name suppression means that your name and any other details that may identify you cannot be published. Defendants and complainants, where certain sexual offenses are alleged, can request this. But if approved, their identity can only be protected unless they are convicted of the crime in which they are being accused. This request was denied but was appealed by defense, allowing name suppression for 20 days. But suppression could not be enforced to media outlets outside of New Zealand. United Kingdom chose to release his name. After doing so, it was reported that over 100,000 searches were conducted using Jesse's name. Justice Minister Andrew Little criticized those media outlets, arguing the publication of Jesse's name endangered his rights for a fair trial. Jesse appeared in the Auckland High Court January 16, 2019. He pled not guilty, and his identity remains suppressed pending appeal. Appeal was heard on February 7th, then Jesse's trial began on November 4th, 2019, where he reaffirmed his earlier not guilty plea. Prosecution argued that Jesse strangled Grace to death after a Tinder date. Also, after killing Grace, evidence was presented proving that Jesse conducted several internet searches. These searches were how to dispose of a dead body, rigor mortis, the hottest fire, large bags near me, and flesh-eating birds. So those were his searches that he did that night. He had no remorse for killing Grace. After strangling her, he took explicit photos of her as she was lying on the bed deceased. Then around 1:26 a.m., he proceeded to look up pornography on his phone. Jesse's identity was formally announced on December 22, 2020, after Supreme Court of New Zealand rejected his appeal to continue name suppression. Also disclosed was Jesse had been convicted of 9 total charges of rape, sexual violation, threatening to kill, and assault in 2 sexual violence trials before a judge in October and in November 2020 that were separate from Grace's case. These charges were just 8 months before meeting Grace. Now, the request for name suppression makes sense to me because he didn't want his name to get out there, because he did have previous charges, so people could bring the convictions to light that he previously had and bring any possible witnesses to Grace's case. During the trial, 2 female witnesses who had also met Jesse on Tinder came forward and testified in front of a jury. One woman testified that Jesse liked bondage sex, including choking. She said that they had met up for drinks, then they reconnected again in October, again meeting for a drink, and at the end of the night they decided to stop and get more alcohol before going to Jesse's apartment, where they would spend a few hours talking and getting to know each other. She claims that she did a lot of the talking because Jesse just kept asking her questions, seemed to genuinely be interested in her life and what she had going on. At one point, she claims that she told Jesse that she didn't want to have sexual intercourse, but she does admit that she gave him oral sex. Eventually, while this was occurring, Jesse put his whole body weight on her head. She said that she was unable to breathe, but couldn't delay this message to Jesse. She was so scared and began to kick in an attempt to get her body weight off of her and to relieve the pressure a little bit, so she could tell him that she was having trouble breathing. She said it wasn't working. She began to have thoughts of, oh, is this how I'm going to die? And that she decided to make her body go limp. After a few moments of her making her body go limp, he stopped and asked her what was wrong, as if he didn't know that she was struggling. She was eventually able to leave his place unharmed, but she was very scared and couldn't believe that that had happened to her. She said it was a moment that would stick with her forever. Now, this happened in the same apartment that Grace had died in. Defense then asked this witness questions. They said, if you were so scared for your life, why did you continue to be in contact with Jesse? They let her know that they found over 780 text messages total between herself and Jesse. She claimed he had known too much about her life and that she was afraid. She said she remained silent up until this point, when she recognized Jesse on the news following Grace's death. This would be the same woman that Jesse met up with the day after he was seen on camera with Grace. 2 other women testified as well, one on Jesse's behalf, saying that they did meet up from Tinder, they did hook up, but she claimed he did choke her, but it was the right amount of pressure and she didn't ever feel that her air was restricted. The last woman to testify said that they had messaged back and forth on Tinder, but they had never met in person. He had messaged her expressing his interest in feet and choking, but it didn't end up going anywhere. And they hadn't spoken in a few days until she had received a message from him on December 3rd and also on the 4th, trying to make plans with her to meet up. In these messages to her, he was being very persistent, but because of the sexual interest he had expressed to her previously, she had denied meeting him for a date. A pathologist testified that a post-mortem examination of Grace's body had found bruising consistent with someone who had been restrained and asphyxiated. He believes that this bruising on her left side of her neck was from a significant pressure for a long period of time. He does not believe pressure from a hand could have caused this. During the CCTV footage of Grace's last moments shown in court, Grace's family broke down and it was all too much for them to take. Defense team argued that Grace's death was a result of consensual sexual misadventure between Grace and Jesse. Due to a sexual interest in bondage, he had asked Grace to choke her during a consensual sex game, which eventually went wrong. They argued he disposed of her body because he panicked, and defense witness expert pathologist contested the Crown's autopsy evidence claims that her injuries were consistent with consensual sex due to the lack of defense wounds on her body. Jury then finds out by witnesses that on the day of Grace and Jesse's first meet, Jesse had lost his telephone salesman job, and previous to that he had multiple failed jobs. He had lived in multiple homes, so he just didn't seem like a very responsible person. Prosecutors painted the picture of a liar, a criminal with previous history, and just him being an irresponsible adult. While the defense painted a picture of Jesse to be a man who was raised in an unstable home, who had a difficult and traumatic childhood. Someone who was cut off from his mother and his only brother as a young child, and after that he had lived with his father in a home with constant arguing and family accusing him of stealing and also lying. He just overall lived a sad type of life is what they were trying to paint. Also to come out during the trial was the positive results of blood DNA found on Jesse's wall, which was that of Grace, which we all knew, but just wanted to mention that. And one last thing that was mentioned was Grace's blood alcohol, which was 106 milligrams over alcohol per 100 milliliters of blood, which was over the legal driving limit of 50 milligrams per 100 milliliters. Trial lasted about 3 weeks, and the jury was asked to consider the death to have been accidental or intentional, because they knew he had done it. He finally admitted to it, but was it accidental or did he intentionally murder her? The jury of 7 women and 5 men deliberated for 5 hours on November 22nd, 2019, and they announced their guilty verdict. Before the sentencing hearing, family and friends of Grace were able to give their victim impact statements to Jesse directly. Grace's mother, Jillian's statement read, quote, "I am absolutely heartbroken that you have taken my daughter's future and robbed me of so many memories that we were going to create." Jillian then goes on to say how she wishes it would have been her and not Grace. She feels so much guilt knowing she couldn't be there for her. She continues on with saying, quote, "She died terrified and alone. You have ripped a hole in my heart, one that will never be repaired. You walked into our lives and destroyed it for your own sexual gratification. Now my family will never be the same," end quote. Next to give a statement was Grace's brother Declan, and his statement said, quote, "This person did not just take Grace's life, but he took away a piece of my life as well. I have not felt whole since my sister's death," end quote. February 21st, 2020, Jesse was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years, which was the longest jail term in New Zealand's history. During his sentence, Jesse lashed out at the judge, telling him, quote, you are full of shit, mate. You have no reason to convict me. You are full of shit," end quote. New Zealand carries a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 10 years. Except when the sentence would be mercy killings, then judges have the discretion to order a longer non-parole period. Family and friends of Grace were happy with the sentence, even though they said nothing can bring back Grace and they will always feel like a part of them is missing. November 2020, Grace's father David unfortunately passed away of cancer, but I am so glad that he was able to see that his daughter's killer was convicted and to bring him some type of closure before his passing. March 18, 2021, Jesse appealed his conviction and sentencing, which was on August 6th in Auckland, and dismissed in July 2021. This story was one of the most chilling stories I've ever seen, and I think it's because almost every single thing that the killer did was captured on camera. There was so much more footage in this case, but if I were to show it, it would have taken hours to even finish this video. Grace was such a beauty. She had her whole life ahead of her, and she just got done with college. She was so young, and she was already on the right track to just be successful. She was more responsible than a lot of adults that I personally know. This case all around is just so tragic, and I see on a lot of Facebook groups and true crime threads that a lot of people like to victim shame for people who meet up on dating apps. They kind of blame the victim, but I don't want to see any negative comments in my comment thread. I don't usually see anyone commenting anything negative, but if I do see it, I'm not going to tolerate it. So if I see it, I will block you and delete your comments. So what are your guys' thoughts on this case? Do you guys have any crazy, scary dating type of stories? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear. I want to thank everyone who has subscribed to my YouTube channel. In just a short week, I went from 240 subscribers to now almost 1,100 subscribers. So I just think that's amazing and such a blessing. If this is the first time you're coming across one of my videos and you haven't subscribed, don't forget to do so. I try to focus on not so known cases and ones that haven't been covered by big YouTubers. And don't forget to follow me on all of my social medias. It's linked below. I am most active on my TikTok and also on my Instagram.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
I hope you all like this video. Stay blessed, and I will see you guys in the next few days when I post my new video. Bye.